Hello, everyone. This is Sabrina Paganoni, and this is the weekly HEALEY ALS Platform Trial weekly webinar. And I'm going to give everyone a few seconds to join us from the waiting room. And while we wait, if we can go to the next slide. Thank you for joining, everyone. And today, it's really a special webinar. It's really an honor for me to introduce Peter Foss, the president of the advisory board of ALS Finding a Cure, a phenomenal organization that's been supporting the platform trial from day one. And so I'll turn it over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Sabrina. Thanks very much. Look, I'm honored to be able to say a few words. I had the pleasure of meeting Sean a few times, and he certainly was a remarkable individual. I think what's been created here and the efforts that you have ongoing will create a wonderful, lasting legacy. For me personally, I've known many of the doctors involved here for 8 years. It's hard to believe, but it has been that many years. I first met Merritt when we started ALS FAC back in 2014. And I would just say as a side, I've always been convinced there's more than one Merritt because nobody can do as much as this person does. I've been looking for a twin. but I think about this whole vision about the platform trials and how quickly it went to a reality in just such a short time. But that's typical. And the leadership team that's been put together, look, it's proven performers that create ideas, but they're ideas that are actionable, and they get right on them and move forward. And this is a great example of that. Look, you've got over 28 sites now, I guess you've already established. We've got trials up and running, and I think it's just a tribute to a wonderful group of people that are so dedicated and have just a drive to perform. So for us, at ALS FAC, we're proud to be part of the team. We're proud to have been there in the beginning. We are delighted to be able to continue support the Healey Center. It gives us hope and comfort that we've got this world-class team working together on these efforts. And we're fully confident that these efforts around this process you've created will result in purpose in the future. So I congratulate all of you for the great work and dedication. Proud to be part of the effort, and we'll continue to participate in any way that we can to help us achieve the goals. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your kind words. It really means a lot, and your support really means a lot, and really has been critical for the launch of this trial. If we can go to the next slide, I just wanted to summarize the fact that since we opened, we have been testing 5 drugs, and the first 4 regimens A, B, C, and D are now in closeout. What that means is that we are completing procedures to get the final results, and instead, number 5, or regimen E, is up and running now. Next slide. So we are actively enrolling for regimen E, which is testing trialos. And for those of you who have an interest in learning more about the molecule and the mechanism of action, I really would like to highlight the science webinar that we gave a few weeks ago. That's available at the link. And so that will talk about the mechanism of action and the science behind the trialos and why we're so excited and why we want to test it. I do want to mention that we're also planning a second webinar and a second webinar to explain more about sort of the trial experience itself. So not so much focused on the science, but focused on what would it mean to be part of regimen E. And one thing I want to mention is that while this is an intravenous infusion with weekly intravenous infusions, we have a fantastic home vendor. So the vast majority of the infusions can be done at home. And so far, the experience of the first participants has been great in terms of sort of the process and the efficiency of these home infusions. So just wanted to say that, and then we will again have a second webinar to also explain more sort of the steps to be part of the trial and what that would entail. So tonight, I wanted to invite our patient navigators, Catherine and Alison. I know many of you know them well, and I'll ask Catherine to start to provide a few updates. So I'll turn it over to you, Catherine.
Sure, so we can head on over to the next slide. So each week we've been providing updates on what the predicted timelines will be for results for the first 4 regimens in the trial. And regimen A was stopped early due to futility, but B, C, and D were still working hard behind the scenes to collect data. So the last participant last visit basically means that last visit when we're gathering data about regimens A, B, C, or D, that's expected somewhere between March and July of this year. And all of these variables kind of build on each other. So that last participant last visit will predict when the database lock is. So database lock is now predicted to be somewhere between July to October. When the database is locked, that's when our biostatisticians can really dig into the data and start analyzing it. Once those analyses are in, we can then present the top line results. And those results are expected somewhere between August and November of this year. I know last week it had been somewhere between July and September, so it's pushed back a little bit based on updated predictions as of this morning. But then those final study reports, which will be the most comprehensive result report, are expected by the end of this year, somewhere between November and December. So we can head to the next slide. And so for enrollment updates for regimen E, in terms of the master protocol level, 51 individuals have signed the informed consent. And for regimen E, 33 individuals have been randomized as of this morning. So we're steadily working our way toward that goal of 160 participants for regimen E. And we just want to say a quick thank you to everyone who has partnered with us on this research project, whether you're participating in the trial or whether you're family, friend, caregiver who's supporting somebody in the trial. We're just so grateful for everyone who's contributed their time and energy. We can go to the next slide. So since last week, we've had a few more sites activated for regimen E. And just as a reminder, until sites are activated for regimen E, they aren't able to enroll participants. So these new sites in bold over on the right side of the screen, since last week, are now able to start that recruitment and screening process for regimen E. The site in Washington State, Swedish Medical Center, they're brand new to the trial for regimen E, so we're really excited to have them on board. We can head to the next slide. This is a list of the sites that are closest to activation. So they're not activated yet, but hopefully we'll be adding them to that map of activated sites either by the end of next week or the week after that. Next slide. You can always go to the Mass General website to check site status. So the QR code there, the link will bring you to the site map. You can view a map with all the locations, and below that is where you can find a table that denotes the status. So if a site is recruiting, that means they're actively looking for participants for regimen E. And you can reach out directly to a member of the team at that site. The contact information will be online as well. Next slide. And as always, if you wanted to reach out with questions or concerns about the platform trial outside of these webinars, Allison and I are always available via phone or email. I might ask Allison to type in the chat just so that's on hand and easier to access there. You can register for these weekly webinars, as many of them in advance as you want. So you can click all the square boxes on that registration link if you want to. We also encourage you to sign up for the ALS link. It's an email broadcast system where we share kind of about research overall, webinar opportunities, and reminders about these webinars. And that's through the Mass General Healy Center. And in a couple of weeks, we're really excited to be joined by guest speaker Nadia Sethi. She is, one of her many hats, I'll say, is that she is a member of the Patient Advisory Committee for the platform trial. So we're excited to hear her perspective in a couple of weeks. Next slide. And as always, we're open to ideas and suggestions. If there is a question you have for these webinars, you can send them to me in advance. If there's a topic, a special topic that you want us to focus on, let us know, and we'll try to put some slides together and address that here. And with that, I think we can stop screen sharing and maybe start taking questions from attendees.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Yes, just a reminder to everybody, if you have any questions or you have anything you want addressed, if you could type it into the Q&A box for us, we'll start taking those. Right now, I'll start with the first question. Dr. Paganoni, goes to you. Why do different clinical trials have different placebo and non-placebo ratios? And why would a patient not want to be in a higher non-placebo trial?
Right. Now, these are all great questions. So, the placebo, active to placebo ratio that gives you the most statistical power normally in traditional trials is actually the 1-to-1, meaning 50% chance of being on active and 50% chance of being on placebo. That said, there are innovative trial designs such as the platform trial, where because we are sharing the placebo data across different regimens, we can lower the chance of somebody being on placebo, because again, we have a more efficient shared infrastructure. So it all comes down to choices in terms of statistical power, where statistical power, what I mean by that is the power of a trial, the chances that you will see a positive treatment effect if there is one. In other words, you need to design the trial in a way that can provide a positive answer if the drug works. So the risk of a design where there isn't enough statistical power, for example, would be that even if the drug works, you cannot see it. So obviously for the platform trial, we looked carefully at all of that. We maximized statistical power, but we didn't need to use the 1-to-1 placebo ratio, active to placebo ratio, because we have the shared placebo, and that's how we were able to dramatically lower the percentage of people on placebo. And then obviously I totally understand that from a patient perspective, it's much more favorable to be in a trial where there is a good active to placebo ratio. The more active, the better, the less placebo, the better. And so that's also what we want to do in future iterations of the trial, hopefully make that even better.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Paganoni, how many of the original 52 trial sites are participating in Regimen E?
It's a great question. I had to say maybe we can get the exact numbers for next week, because I don't remember off the top of my head, but sort of as a general summary, the majority are, and then we also added a few new ones. So it's we can get you the exact numbers next week.
Perfect. Catherine, I'm going to put you on the spot for a question I have. If you could share with people, I know we're getting a lot of calls about Regimen E and a lot of emails. Can you kind of walk through the process of what people can expect when they contact you and how you help people find which sites are available?
Yeah, sure. So when somebody emails me, depending on where you are in the search for clinical trials, we can just kind of talk through the platform trial and any questions you have. If somebody is interested in participating, the flow is usually, recommending that they reach out to the platform trial team at a local site or multiple local sites if there's a few that are within striking distance. We're not competing with each other, so you can reach out to multiple teams and we'll try to find the right fit. But from there, the research team kind of takes the wheel and they'll request, as soon as they're able to start the screening process and pre-screens, they'll request medical records. If you're seen at that site as a patient, it makes it a little bit easier. If you're seen outside that clinic, then you just have to sign medical record release and send them over. But from there, the team will just kind of walk through the criteria, having those records in hand, usually do a pre-screening phone call, at which point, if it looks like you're a good candidate, that's when they would start talking about bringing someone in for an in-person screening visit. And that's the really pivotal visit where, it's kind of the final point that determines if somebody would qualify to enroll in the trial.
Thank you for that. Peter, are you still on the call with us? Or I can ask you, Dr. Paganoni, if you could expand a little bit on how does ALS Finding a Cure support the HEALEY Platform Trial?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is really a collaboration among so many in the community, and we're really grateful to not only our industry partners, but also foundations and philanthropists who are supporting some of the more innovative aspects of this trial. So companies will help provide drug and some of the funding for their regimen, but there's also additional goals of the trial, as you may remember from previous presentations. We also want to develop new biomarkers. We also want to develop better and more efficient outcome measures, do DNA analysis or things like that. And that's where foundations really help us with grants that we can use to really continue to innovate the trial, so that this becomes really a shared resource for everyone. So the goal of the trial is primarily, obviously, to test the drugs, but we also have the goal of sharing our information, developing new biomarkers, etc. And that's something that foundations such as ALS Finding a Cure help really to a great extent.
Thank you. Catherine, do you know off the top of your head, is Johns Hopkins one of the trial sites for Regimen E?
So Johns Hopkins definitely participated in previous regimens. They're not up and running yet for Regimen E. I'd have to check. I've got a little cheat sheet behind the scenes that I don't have pulled up, but I can check that. If you wanted to connect via email, and we can talk through maybe what the projected timeline is for that site to get up and running.
Perfect, thank you. Dr. Paganoni, question that we got prior to the webinar today, do we have any updates on when the next regimens might be starting?
So we are working, we are actually contracted with 3 companies to work on the design. And so the actual timelines for each will depend on a few things. And so I do expect that the first regimen will be available in the second half or late 2022. And then we continue to engage with industry partners for more regimens. I mean, the goal is to have 2 or 3 regimens up and running at all times. So right now, again, we have 1 regimen. We are working on opening this another one at the end of the year, and we are already, working on more for 2023.
Wonderful, thank you. Catherine, can you remind people how they determine if they're eligible for Regimen E in the trial?
So preliminary, or I guess if you wanted to check yourself before reaching out to a team, clinicaltrials.gov actually has a complete list of the eligibility criteria for the platform trial. There's master level criteria that applies to all the regimens, but then for each individual regimen, there might be some added specific criteria that's based on if there's any added considerations for the study drug being tested. But in terms of determining final eligibility, that's something that would need to be decided by an investigator on the trial based on medical record review and somebody's history. But if you wanted to just look yourself, there's resources online. We also have an online eligibility checking tool that I can share in the chat box too.
Yeah, I do want to just take a second and acknowledge that we've gotten a couple of questions come in that are personal situations. And if you've given us your name, we're happy to address that offline, but for the sake of privacy, we're not going to answer that directly right now, but I did want you to know that we have received that. I think that's all the general questions that we have had come in. Catherine or Dr. Paganoni, is there anything that you would like to add or close out with today?
No, I think it's fantastic that we have this team. I just want to thank you, Catherine and Alison, for being such wonderful patient navigators, and then for everyone on the line, please don't hesitate to contact them by email or phone. And again, they're here to help, and we really want to be a collaborative community. So thank you for all you're doing and for replying to all of our patients.
Wonderful. Then thank you all for joining us today, and we will plan on seeing you next week.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for being here. Have a great afternoon, everyone.